you. Welcome everyone to the Ashland Board of Selectmen meeting for March 6, 2019. If there's anyone recording in the audience other than WACA-TV, could you let me know? Caesar, you're okay. All right, so I'm going to start with the vision statement. Steve, would you like to read the vision statement?
Sure. The town of Ashland will be a prosperous and fiscally sound community with a full range of housing, business, cultural, educational, and recreational opportunities in a safe and attractive environment for residents and visitors.
Yolanda, the mission statement?
Sure. The Ashland Board of Selectmen is dedicated to promoting responsible fiscal management, advocating for sustainable development and growth, and providing excellent municipal services which will enhance the quality of life in our diverse community. The Ashland Board of Selectmen is committed to providing clear goals and objectives for town management and creating effective engagement and public participation with residents, state legislators, and other elected officials in order to achieve our mission.
All right, thank you. And may I ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And Mark, are you prepared to do the honors tonight?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And sit some up.
Okay. Anyone here for public participation?
Since you got me up, I would like, my name's Muscente, good evening.
Good evening.
Spring is coming soon, I hope.
Couple more weeks.
Okay. If anybody at home watched the Board of Health meeting, they watched a great meeting last night. I would like to thank a couple people that got me through Heart Healthy Ashland agenda. First of all, I would like to thank Sue Roby. I was told by Mr. Orr and Laura that they came down and got information, and you gave it to them. And town manager, appreciate the stepping up and what was said and how, well, not said here, but what was helped out for. I know you're downstairs doing finances, so you had a better crowd. And to the rest of the board, how I asked the question through the board last meeting, I'm gonna ask, because it's not on the agenda, I would like to say to the board, as I said, the Board of Health, can this Board of Selectmen go forth with steps to help the Board of Health get this through? Last time we had this, as I was told last night, was in 2007. And it was for a good reason it was there, but now it's been 12 years. And since we're kind of talking and establish the pond thing, it's kind of get something positive in front of that so the town can be recognized. And hopefully we can work out together, be happy, healthy, and
Sure.
positive, so the town can be a good bright eye for the spring coming. Thank you.
All right,
Thanks, Mark.
And so
Thank you,
we
Mark.
should probably take that under advisement as to a possible future agenda item for Heart Healthy Community. If someone wants to bring that up, but just throwing that out, okay. And
I thought we did.
we are.
Okay, so we are a heart healthy community.
Yeah, we did that a few years ago.
That's what I thought. Okay.
So is there any further, well, I don't want to, just for consideration, so if someone wants to bring it up. So under, John's here with an update from Fusion, so I'm going to invite him up here for public participation. John? So
Hello, everybody. Good evening.
Hi, John.
I just spoke to the landlord. They gave me update, unfortunately. Looks like somebody already signed a PMS for the building.
Oh.
But personally, I was hoping own the restaurant forever and work with you people. Thank you for your support. But at this moment, I don't have full information who the buyer, but who's a builder. They were looking for to build something else, whatever. But that's up to the town. But my job is to find out what they need me to. I want to open a restaurant ASAP, but unfortunately, landlord they want more money, this and that. So we don't come to the conclusion, compromise. That's why we took so long. So I hope the town give me a little more chance, a little more time, that whatever result come out next few months, I'm sure there will be somebody approach the town, what they want to do.
Sure, go ahead, Steve.
So, as I recall, the last time you were here, John, we talked about the fact that in order to recapture the license, we had to give you a notice,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
And at that last meeting, we didn't do that. We gave you a period of time to come back, give us an update, which
Yes, sir.
I'm
That's why
taking this as your update. So I think at this point, not knowing, I mean, it still seems to be very unclear what the situation is, but what I'm reading between the lines is not very favorable towards you reopening. That's what it sounds like.
Well, I had to tell the truth. I'm assuming that my landlord was try hold on for their benefit. In other words, if, that's my guess, I
Yeah.
have no idea.
Yeah.
If whoever is buying, developer, lock down the building, if the town doesn't approve, they want me to open the restaurant ASAP. At that time, they will compromise with me, in
Yeah.
other words.
But
So-
at this point, they have a signed PNS agreement with another party?
With another party, I had no information.
Okay.
My lawyer are working on that.
Okay, so I think, from my perspective, I think it's appropriate for the board to, at this point, extend a 6-month notice. And I
Yes, sir.
think within the next 6 months, is it reasonable that you're going to?
Yes, sir, that's why I'm
Okay.
here for. I don't want to hold the time. I love the area, love the people, and you're so nice, and I'm trying very hard. And things happen I do not want to happen. Something, for fire, that things. In my 40-year Massachusetts, I'm not a violent man. I work and support my 4 kids in college, all done, and I'm grateful with that. But things happen. I don't know what happened. But as you know, I'm only tenants. Between the landlord, they wanted so much, and for us, just wanted reasonable.
Yeah, yeah. No, I
appreciate
can
it,
see
you-
that you're in a difficult situation, obviously.
Yes, sir, I'm calling in the middle that, as you know, a lot of landlords want more, as much they want, as much they want more. But I was stupid enough to believe the old-fashioned shake a hand, certain things which is, don't want to,
Yeah,
talk bad things about other people. I just say that I was old-fashioned. I shake my hand, you help me, I help you. That's
yeah.
it. That's,
Well, you're talking to old-fashioned people here, too, so we understand that.
and I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'm,
And I'm speaking for myself here. I mean, I think the rest of the board needs to weigh in.
Procedurally, could we take action, is there an action that we should take tonight, or?
I do think it would be tough to take legitimate action tonight. I think you'd probably have to put a notice.
Okay.
And that's, the suggestion would be a 6-month notice at this point.
Yeah, so vote to issue a 6-month notice on your next agenda. Place that on your
Okay.
next agenda.
So we'll do that.
So-
Everyone
Yeah, I
pretty
think that
much in
makes sense.
agreement with
Yeah.
that?
Yep.
Okay.
thank you all.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks,
I'm
John.
sure you all assume that I'm calling in the middle of this situation.
We understand.
Yeah, because I'm assuming if there's a PNS in place, and this is just an assumption on my part, that the consummation of that sale is only contingent if that person gets their permits and things of that nature. So as that, John could be kind of hanging in the
Dangling for a
wind
while.
for quite
Yeah.
a while. So
Yeah.
I would encourage you, John, to, if you want to stay in Ashland, look at different places to open up a business here in town. Reach out to Beth Reynolds, our Economic Development Director, and you kind of take control of your own situation here, and not necessarily be dictated to by your current
Exactly.
your landlord.
Exactly. Thank you.
Good, yeah.
Thank you for all.
Yeah.
Good luck,
Yeah,
John.
thank you.
I will
Thanks.
be back if you need me anytime.
Okay.
Susan have my number. Call me back before September. But in the meantime, I will work with my lawyer, see what's going on.
Okay,
Okay.
good luck.
Even my lawyer said, we had 20-year lease, why you do that? But
Yeah.
thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
John.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John.
Appreciate it all.
Does it make sense for Beth to maybe approach the owner and see what's going on there?
I don't think it's harmful to have inquiries made.
see what their intentions are.
Mm.
Okay. The next item is to appoint Amy Caruso to the Ashland Cultural Council. So I see Lakshmi's here. Did you want to come up and just kind of give us a brief overview, or seeing as you're here?
So we went from 5 members to 4 members recently, and so we don't meet quorum because we have to have a member of 7, and now we have 5. So to get to the 5, we need Amy to come aboard, and she showed a lot of interest, so
Yeah, that's
that's why
great.
we want her.
And we've had a chance to look at her
Yep.
form. And,
Yep.
Any questions or thoughts or issues with
No,
that?
let's
I'm
get
good
them
with
whole
Amy.
so they can take care of their business.
And we thank you to Amy for coming forward. That's great to hear from her and
Yep.
everything. So I will entertain a
Happy to have you
motion.
here.
Oh, any other questions for
No.
Lakshmi? I don't think, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we appoint Amy Caruso to the Ashland Cultural Council with a term to expire 3/6/21.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
None. Motion carries.
Thank
So
you.
before you leave,
Lakshmi, hold on a second.
but I was just gonna mention, there was a nice article in local pages about the Cultural Council. It came out today and had a list of all the grants that you've provided. So, for the community at large, it's gives an idea of what the Cultural Council does on an annual basis with a small amount of money. And, hopefully we can beef that up a little bit so that you can do even more good deeds.
Yeah, so I saw the email about the grant application, so we're gonna take a look at it.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Great,
you.
thanks, Lakshmi. Okay, so the next item is the 7:30 suspended hearing on the Wine Empire. Do we need to wait till 7:30 to take action here, or?
Did you open the hearing at the last meeting and just table
We
it?
did, and we suspended
We'll
it.
have to wait till 7:30,
Okay,
and
so
then you
let's-
can talk about it and
All right,
go back.
so why don't we move on to the consent agenda?
Okay.
Before you move on to
Sure.
that, I just want to make sure the agenda that I have still has the firefighters MOU in the consent agenda, and we're going to take that out.
It's
It's out
out.
for ours,
Okay.
the updated one, it's been removed.
Okay.
Okay, so the consent agendas, anybody want to take anything off the remaining items of
Nope.
the consent agenda?
No, we're good.
And I would put it up if I
So I
could
will,
get it to go up,
why
but
don't we
it's
wait
not.
a minute?
Yep.
and-
No?
I'll be happy to read them. So, approve the February 6, 2019 regular session minutes. Accept a $100 donation from Bill Gath for the Kid Spot spinner. Thanks, Bill. Accept a donation amount of $1,000 from Sprint for beautification. Thank you to Sprint. And waive the 15-day waiting period with regards to appointments of David Connors to the Ashland Fire Department to serve as a dispatcher, Nicholas Muscente for dispatcher as well, Anthony Farragher-Gemma and Caleb Hagarty as call firefighters. So congratulations to them, and it's great to hear people joining the department. So,
Good. So,
and they seem very well qualified.
good. Move to approve as presented.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda items, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Consent agenda is adopted. Thank you. Okay, do we want to do the firefighters MOU?
Next on the agenda.
Do that next? Okay. So I've included a copy of the MOU that's been negotiated with Local 1893, which is our professional firefighters union. Really, there's, I think, I would say 4, even though there's 7 different pieces of the MOU, I think the major ones really kind of come down to these 4, which is a change in the base wage, modified for cost of living increases, and that is 2% in the first year, 2% in the second year, and then 1% in the third year. We're also making a change in the stipends for emergency medical technicians and paramedics. So those were currently a fixed stipend amount. What we've done is we've converted those to a percentage of the step 4 firefighter salary, so we don't have to, it can always kind of keep up, instead of what has happened before where we've had very large lags in any increase in those stipends, and then you have to make big jumps, which have a significant budgetary impact. And it comes out to about a $400 increase in the paramedic stipend and about a $66 increase in the EMT stipend compared to what things are right now.
And is that competitive in the marketplace?
It is competitive. During the last contract, we made significant advances in our stipends in terms of parity with some of the other communities. And then the last one I want to point out is our clothing and equipment allowance. We currently issue one set of turnout gear in this equipment. We are going to increase that to 2. The first set's going to be issued on employment, and then the second set within the first year of employment. The reason being is that we are, well, the world is starting to really kind of see some of the effects of the carcinogens that can be left residually in uniforms and equipment after some of these fire incidents. And so we did invest in a washer and dryer a couple of years ago, but obviously that takes some time. So if there's a call in between, this gives us the ability to respond to those.
That's good.
And then finally, I think really the only other thing, non-monetary, is increasing the residential requirement from a 15-mile radius to a 20-mile radius. So.
Do we feel that's still adequate for people have to get called in, or?
We do. I mean, it was a compromise, I think, between the way the shift schedules are and everything now. People can live further away. The problem is callbacks when you need them can become a little bit problematic.
Okay. And this is effective retro July 1st, last July 1st,
July 1st of 2018.
to 6/30 of '21, so it's a three-year contract. Any further questions or items? So thank you, Michael, and staff for negotiating this and coming to an agreement.
What else is outstanding in terms of contracts?
So the police department, and I feel we're pretty close on that one. There's just a couple of clarifying things we needed to come up with. And then the clerical contract, which we're still actually waiting for a response from their business representative for bargaining. So
And DPW is outside.
DPW did, I think, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so those are our 4.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like a motion?
Yes,
Mr. Chair?
please. Yes.
I move that we approve the memorandum of understanding with the Ashland Firefighters Union.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay. All right, so the next one is the Affordable Housing Unit Authorization for signing. We have an eligible purchaser certificate here in our, so Michael, I don't know if you just wanted to give a quick summary of what this is about.
Yeah, so as you're probably aware, and I think some of the town is at least aware, we have a number of units that we take responsibility for at the Village of America's site that are deemed affordable and deed restricted as affordable. And so basically, you have a qualified buyer. Once that qualified buyer is at the point where they're ready to leave the home, a lot of times the trust will buy the property back and then sell it again to a new qualified owner. So we do have an eligible purchaser. We just need to have a designee from the board to actually authorize or sign the relevant documents about this. Again, this is under the local initiative program, and it keeps this on our affordable rolls.
Right, yeah.
All right, so do we have a time frame when you think someone will need to be available to actually do this?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you'll you'll have to actually be physically present at the closing.
Oh, just at
So,
some point.
yeah.
to
You just
sign
need
it.
to authorize somebody to sign on your behalf.
Any volunteers wanna do it?
Sure,
Joe, all right.
why not? I'm on the Affordable Housing Trust, so why not?
There you go. Okay, makes sense. A motion to appoint Joe.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion's carried. So Joe, you're authorized to sign on behalf of the board.
Thank you,
Thanks.
be
Okay.
happy to do it.
Okay. So, the next items are just, kind of informational, so I don't know, Michael, if, this is under, so reminder, the volunteer breakfast is on March 9th, 2016, 8:30 to 10 a.m. Do we have we had a number of did we ask for responses? I'm trying to remember, okay.
So we haven't, I sent it to Yolanda earlier, I think about 45 people.
Oh, nice,
Yeah, it was.
very nice.
Oh, very nice.
Yep.
So, great, and so that's this Saturday?
Yep.
At the
Be there
community
early to set
center.
up.
Yeah, we should all probably be there around
Yeah.
8 to set up.
So we'll set up at 8.
I believe it'll be open at 7:30?
Yep.
45.
7:45. Okay.
Right, that's the email I got.
And Gabe will be there. That's good. All right, very
We're
good.
willing.
Do we need to talk anything about the agenda or thoughts of what we're doing with the folks there? Last year, we had kind of a nice round table where people talked a little bit about what they were doing, and we talked about future stuff.
Yeah, that was nice, actually.
I think that
Yeah.
was good.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
that was good.
so we'll do something like that, so hopefully we'll get a good turnout. Okay, all right, so Michael, the meals tax home rule petition?
Sure, I'm gonna pass some documentation around that I put together. I think back when we had a retreat, I had mentioned the possibility of establishing a special revenue fund for our meals tax revenue, which currently goes into the general fund. And so tonight I'm asking to, requesting your support for helping to establish that fund. That would have to be done through a home rule petition. That would need to go through town meeting and again go through the legislature. There is precedent for this. The city of Marlborough did the exact same thing back in 2013. They established their own special revenue fund for their meals tax to be dedicated towards fields and also sports tourism is what they deemed it at the time. And so what this essentially does is it takes the meals tax revenue, which is currently about $225,000 a year, that goes into the general fund, and it puts it into its own special revenue fund. So it doesn't get commingled with the different funds and would only be spent on economic development activities. So we would move our economic development budget onto that special revenue account. There's really, I think, three main advantages to do this. So it gives us the ability to dedicate a funding stream towards economic development activities, which is really, really important when things are actually getting cut. When you're in the throes of a recession and you're looking at places where you cut, a lot of times economic development, training, things of that nature get cut, and that's actually when you have the opportunity to make some really great investments in your community, in the business community, is when the market is down and things of that nature. Second, this gives, so the Board of Selectmen, I believe it was a couple of years ago, you identified a number of businesses or types of businesses that you would like to see here in town, right? Because we talk about not just any business, we talk about bringing in the right businesses. And one of those was restaurants. So this gives us the ability to actually kind of peg performance to, some actual monetary value here. And then third, it gives us, I think, a little bit of visibility. Similarly, it gives us a little bit of visibility, or actually a lot of visibility into our economic development activities and how they're working out, and maybe gives us an indication of where we would maybe need to shift some things. And I can envision, again, the first year we would move the economic development budget, which is about $165,000 this year. We would move that over to this fund. It'd actually give us the ability to invest more in our business incentive program, which I believe Beth came and spoke to you about last, or one of the things she did was speak to you about that at the last meeting.
Yep.
Which I don't know how much she talked to you about it, but, we've got the potential for some private partners to help amplify some of our own funding. And then we already have a couple businesses that are interested in taking advantage of it and have actually moved forward in the process of taking advantage of it.
Great. Question on the accomplishments through the meals tax.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm assuming that what is listed here, the director, the increase in hours of the library, and the additional programming at the senior center has been absorbed now into our operating budget.
That's correct.
So that there's no longer a need for that particular spend.
Exactly, and we've actually gone above and beyond, especially with the library. We'd initially wanted to use this to increase the library 5 hours. We've actually increased the library hours 10 hours above that now at this point in time. And same thing, I think, with the senior center. We've made investments in a volunteer coordinator. Kim doing some work there. We do the lifelong learning program. We have increased bus hours. So yes, those have been absorbed into our
And
budget.
you're confident you'll be able to continue that even
Yes.
after you do that?
Well, that's where I was just gonna ask that question, Michael. When hard times do come upon us, and I hope it's not for many, many years down the road, if at all, some of the first things that go are cutting hours, so that way so we don't lose people. And my concern would be that where this has already been, these four topics have already been absorbed into our budget, these are probably one of the first, 2, 3, or 4 things that would probably be eliminated from our budget because we don't want to lose people. So is there any way that we could at least maintain the monies of the funding and have it earmarked should the time come that these are not, these are removed out of our budget, that we still have the ability? Because when we went to town meeting and we discussed this is one of the things that we sold to the townspeople, that these were the groups, or these were the issues that we were gonna be funding, so that way we could have more hours, and I think it's great that we were able to absorb it into our own budget. But what's usually happens, the first thing they go are man hours. So you eliminate those man hours, because you don't wanna lose people, per se. You don't wanna lose police, you don't wanna lose fire, you don't wanna lose teachers, you don't wanna lose DPW, which unfortunately, they're the first ones to go.
Right.
So, I'm a little leery about putting all this into the economic development fund, which is just as important. Please don't think that I don't think it's important, but I'd like to have a safeguard in some way, shape, or form to keep some of those monies available for these programs should something happen down the road. Or do we address it when it happens? And that may be too late. So just a concern.
Well, I think to just answer some, I think those are very real concerns. I think those are valid concerns. And first of all, this would be reversible with a subsequent town meeting vote if, for some reason, we needed to do that.
Okay.
But we will have another economic downturn. It's not a matter of if, it's when, right? And so what we've tried to do is we've tried to develop a budget holistically, not just for these different departments, that is designed to absorb cuts in certain places and not reduce people. And that's why you see increases in contracted services, and you see places where we can do like some one-time things or some things on a contractual basis or a private contractor basis. So when we do get to the inevitable downturn and we do have to make some reductions, we don't have to hit people. Some people ask, why do you hire 4 firefighters as opposed to 8? It's the sustainability of, maintaining that personnel, not just during the good times, but in the bad times. The other thing that I think is very, very important and very, very different from when the last economic downturn happened in 2008 was we have a very, very substantial stabilization fund now at $6 million. And so, that is, I haven't proposed getting it to that point just to kind of sit on it and it be a stockpile forever. It's
Mhm.
designed for when we go into some of these downturns, that's something that we can draw on.
Okay, I just have that concern, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So what is our current meals sales tax revenue? What are we getting in from that?
About 225,000. I expect the next year, based on some of the restaurants that have opened, and some of the increase in activity that we're seeing, that would probably be around 240.
Have we been able to monetize or look at, I mean, Beth's doing a great job, I know there's a lot of stuff going on. Have we been able to monetize what our increase in businesses have been since we brought Beth on?
We've certainly done an analysis of what the meals tax revenue has been and where it is now.
Okay,
Unfortunately, one of the things that we've tried to do is to actually get visibility into each restaurant's like tax submissions to the
Right.
Department of Revenue. And unfortunately, we can't do that.
okay.
We're dependent upon them to be able to release the data, and they're somewhat hesitant to do that, which I can understand. But I think just in terms of just looking at the overall revenue, you can definitely see a difference.
Okay, and then
Can I just interject with a procedural thing? Do we have to do that hearing now, being 7:30? And we can take up this discussion after that, or?
Yep.
All right, so what do I do here? We're
I
gonna,
move that we reopen the suspended hearing for Wine Empire.
And second.
all those in favor of reopening the suspended hearing, say
Aye.
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 Opposed, none. Hearing's reopened. Okay, and I have here an update that the request of Gianluca Caroli to withdraw his application for the alteration of the premises. So that's the suggested motion, and
Well,
so,
to rescind it
Yeah.
on the updated one.
oh,
He's
okay,
withdrawing his request.
okay.
I move that we grant the request of Gianluca Caroli to withdraw his application for the alteration of premises at Wine Empire.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Motion's been made in second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that's been withdrawn. Okay, so we can continue with
Okay.
the other agenda item. Go
I have-
ahead, Yolanda.
I have a couple more questions.
Sure.
So the current revenue, the 225, so 160 of it, I mean, it's in the general budget, but if we go by how we said we were gonna spend it, so about 160 of it currently is going toward economic development. We know that the design of Pond Street, I would think that the bond doesn't have much left, or,
I think it's paid.
okay. I mean, it was a very small amount that we had to pay to get to the 25%.
It was, I believe, total was Cecil, because remember Cecil was also part of
Right.
that. I believe it was around 300.
Right, so, okay. So the difference, the 160 to the 225, sort of to Joe's point, will we be okay in the general budget if we pull that out and then just apply it to economic development?
Yes. What I would like to do, though, is utilize that delta to invest more into our economic development programs.
No, I understand that. I just
okay.
want to, again, just to sort of, to follow up to Joe's point of, we have this, we know that the 225 is coming to the
Okay,
general
I
budget.
get what-
About 160 is going to economic development. That means the other portion's going to other things. As long as in the rest of our budget, we can cover that difference if we pull out the whole 225.
Yeah.
To make
And-
sure that the senior center and the library and all those programs can keep going.
Can keep going. Initially, when we had first started this, we had anticipated the revenue at 200,000 and kind of broke things down based on that. And I believe
Right.
it was 160 for economic development and 40 for the rest. And actually, the revenue assumptions were right on target, pretty much. They were for the
When we
first couple of
started,
years.
yeah.
200, so.
Okay.
Actually, come to think about it, I mean, so we're got like 5 years, from 200,000 to getting to about 240,000.
Yeah.
That's about a 20% increase.
And my last thing is, so what would the steps be? Just that we support this and we would bring it to town meeting?
Yes, I'm asking for your support on this and to help be a sponsor of this at town meeting. So it would take a town meeting vote, similar to what the economic development program was, and then it would need to go through the legislature.
I think it makes sense.
Yep.
As long as we can continue funding the other things with that money pulled out,
I'm committed to
I
it.
think it
yeah.
makes sense. Okay. You need a motion?
I think we do, right?
Yeah,
So I'll entertain a motion to approve the town manager's request for a special revenue fund for economic development. Is that
So moved.
basically?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, motion passes. Hi, Michael.
thank you.
Congratulations on
Warrant
that.
article on the
All
next
right.
town meeting.
So, the next item is the notice of intent for annual town meeting warrant articles is due March 22nd, 2019. So I guess that's.
Well,
announcement. Do you
this
wanna
was
talk
just,
about that, or-
this was just a reminder, just, we have sent the
Okay.
guidance out.
Mhm.
I think Jen, a little bit later, under town manager reports,
You're
will
gonna
kind of
talk
give you
some
an
more.
idea of what some of the
Okay.
articles are.
Okay. All right, so the next is the BAA spring grants due. Who's talking about that?
Susan, just to clarify on the spring grants,
Yes.
May 30th or March?
Oh, no, sorry, March.
March 30th, okay,
Yeah.
so just to clarify, the BAA grant applications are due in-house by March 30th. And just as a reminder to all the applicants, any applicant that has applied or received a grant within the last 12 months is required to provide documentation as to how those fundings were used as part of the application. So it's important, as you're putting the application together, to include that information, and we just like to keep kind of informal track as to how these dollars are being spent, and, you know, we're confident they're being spent for all good purposes, but I think it's important that we get, you know, some feedback, so.
Okay, thank
And
you.
we still have the 1-year timeframe to spend the
Yes,
money, right?
yes.
And all that's posted on the website, right?
Yeah, and it's part of the application, and Susan's revised the application, not for this round, but for the fall. There'll be a little bit better explanation of the requirements, so.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I think the scholarship submissions, someone want to give an update on that? Talk about it, Yolanda, Joe?
Scholarships are open
Yep.
for Board of Selectmen. One male, one female graduating who lives in Ashland, and they are due by May 1st.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Yeah.
The next item is the Eversource update. So just to remind people, the Eversource, this refers to Eversource's application to replace the existing gas transmission line that goes through Ashland and ends on, the project would end on Cedar Street, goes from Hopkinton through Ashland to Cedar Street. The board has been involved, you know, under this process. Just a quick review, the town has been granted intervenor status, and this is a very complex legal process. And actually, we have engaged, comes under the heading of litigation, so we are engaged, we've had executive session and are dealing with our attorneys and consultants in our discussions with the Energy Facility Siting Board and Eversource. And as you may or may not be aware, this is there's a lot of documents that are publicly available. We will have soon our latest kind of filing will be posted there, I believe, tomorrow. So if people want to check on that. So we're really limited in what we can talk about because we're dealing in executive session, and this comes under the heading of litigation. There has been some question about us being in executive session. I just think it'd be helpful to repeat the purposes that, you know, I declared that we should be in executive session, that this is litigation, and we are dealing with another party, and we have grounds that we, you know, do not want to communicate publicly, and things that we're discussing vis-a-vis the other party, which is Eversource. So, and that's pretty much the update.
Well done.
So, more to
Yep.
come. All right,
Nicely
thank
said.
you. All right, town council review. That's Michael, I think your thing.
Right, so I had notified you, I think a couple meetings ago, that we're gonna start the process of reviewing town council and Mead, Tellerman and Costa, who's our firm. So you have been provided the forms. This is the third year that we're utilizing this process. In terms of a timeline, I would
Oh,
like,
Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
But just one thing on the Eversource, we talked about having a link to the EFSB site on town. So will that be available, or is that available?
It will be available,
Okay.
so.
we were just talking about
Great.
where to
The
place
Okay,
it.
that's a good thing, so people can look in the town website. That's an easy way to get access. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
So, what I'd like to propose for the board in terms of a timeline is, if you could get your forms filled out and sent to myself, and by March 20th, so a couple of weeks from today, I will collate them. As we have done in past practice, the chair and I can meet with Lisa as the principal of the firm and have a conversation with her on April 3rd. And then, I don't know, Rob, you and I will have to check a little bit with this.
Yeah.
That's on a Wednesday.
Okay.
And I don't know if you feel comfortable doing this on the phone or if you want to
Yeah,
be part of it.
yeah, let's talk about
Um,
that.
No changes. Or
And then we could either have a review that night, you know, what you want to talk about publicly in terms of the
Sure.
evaluation process and the findings, or wait until the second meeting in April. But,
Can we get a copy of this, just this document separately electronically, so we can fill it out electronically?
sure.
That way, we're not,
Make it
Yep.
you're not getting
No,
paper and you get
that's-
it.
Yep,
Yeah.
much easier for all of
For all
us.
of us.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, so that time frame works
Sure.
for everybody?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so, yeah.
Yeah.
By March 20th, okay. Any other questions about the town council evaluation,
No.
discussion people want to have? Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so the Board of Selectmen coin. That's Steve's.
So, a few meetings ago, we talked about the idea of having, as part of our process of recognizing volunteerism and good deeds in the community, I think we all seem to like the idea of a coin, a proclamation coin. So, we agreed that one side should be the town seal, second side was up for discussion. Based on the board's input, this is a mock-up of side one and side two, and
Where is that?
so it's there for your submission, and I can tell you, I do have pricing that is been made available. So, but in terms of your input or feedback on.
Sure. Is there a way to show this on what you put together here?
Well.
Well,
I
it's the
guess we
town
can-
seal on one side,
Right, and,
which I'd like to recommend that we take off the words town of and have it just say Ashland, Mass, so that it matches the seal.
okay, so we eliminate
Good point.
town of, yep, and incorporated on March 16th,
Yeah,
or
1846, yeah.
1846.
So that's right, so just the
yeah.
town of.
And then on the flip side, Ashland Board of Selectmen, and then in the service of community.
Right,
is
and there's a nice picture of the town hall.
the town
I
hall
presume.
with the flags.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, so we
It took me a
incorporated,
second to realize it was town hall, but then I looked at it, I'm like, okay, no, that is town hall.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
don't know if that was just the I was looking at it on my computer
Right.
originally, so, but no, I like it, nice job.
okay, good.
Yeah.
So, as far as pricing goes, I've been quoted for a hundred pieces, $7 each, so $700 there.
That's not bad.
For 200 pieces, was quoted $5.25, so it's $1,000, $1,050. Makes sense to me to go
get
for the 200.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And that would come out of
And-
our gift account.
Yeah, I guess that was gonna be
Yeah.
my question.
Yeah.
That's all right.
And this was quoted through NEC Trophy up on Pine Street.
Nice.
And they do a lot of work for the town, and all the awards that we give out come from Leslie and Linda up there, so.
Yeah. Steve, do you want to just review for people why we're doing this coin, or your thoughts on, and how we would use this coin, or?
Sure. So, you know, the handout of coins, and I think it's something that was, it's very big in the military, what's called a challenge coin. And if folks remember when Tony Schiavi was town manager, he made a practice of handing out these challenge coins. And he, you know, it always resonated with me. I don't have one myself. My wife has one, and she kind of sticks it in my face all the
What's
time,
behind
right?
that? Yeah.
Look at
I have
this.
one.
But,
You don't have one.
But, you know, it always resonated for me, and I always thought that, yeah, well, we should do that at some point, and so here we are. I think it's a good, you know, we do a lot of proclamations over a period of year, but this is, you know, something a little bit unique that somebody can carry with them, and, you know, it's just a nice way of recognizing, you know, tremendous number of volunteers and just good deeds in general that we're privileged to have, and so.
Do we want to sort of to Rob's point, do we want to put some criteria as to how we want to use them, or maybe we think about it and discuss it?
Yeah,
Because I think to make it special, as you said, you want to have good reasons, or, I mean, I think just some great volunteerism is a good reason, but
Yeah,
Give it a
we can
little
talk
more.
about
Yeah.
criteria. I mean, you know, my only concern with criteria is it's potentially dangerous. If you do it for one, why aren't you doing it for another? So you gotta be
Right.
very careful
Yeah.
with criteria. But, you know, we can talk about that.
Sure.
You know, I guess tonight, all I'm asking is authorization to
approval.
place an order.
Yep.
Yeah.
I move that we authorize Steve Mitchell to order the new Board of Selectmen coins, and with the revisions that were made.
Second for that?
Second.
Motion's been made in second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None?
Yep.
Congratulations.
So,
Thank
well,
you, Steve.
Thank you.
coin.
That's,
Thank
I
you
think
for
it's
going.
nice,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
you know, I
I'm just
think it'll
rather
be.
thankful you didn't have me sliding in home. On the other
But you were
side.
out, so we wouldn't want to.
Here we go.
Yeah. So, again, you know, you're gonna get tired of hearing me call this affectionately the BS coin, but, you know, it's,
So it's the BS coin.
Very good. All right, thank you. The
Oh,
next,
boy.
next item I have is a regional select board meeting, right? Is that what-
Yeah.
March 14th.
And I think that's just there as an update. Does anybody want to, has anyone looked at the agenda? I didn't, I just kind of glanced. Is there anything you
I
want to
know
talk
that
about with
Liz,
that?
I know Liz was gonna be sending out an updated
I think
agenda.
it came out.
Did it come out? I didn't.
40, they're continuing the 40B discussion,
Okay,
and then I think some more discussion about regionalization.
okay.
And this is just a recap for people. This is a regional, what are the other towns that are going to be there? Hopkinton?
Hopkinton, Holliston.
Millis,
Medway, Millis,
those are it,
Yep.
right?
I think there's one more.
just the 5, right?
No, they extended it to, I thought there was one.
Sherburne? Sherburne?
Millis.
And
Millis was
is-
always in there.
Medway, Milford, Millis, Hopkinton, Holliston, and Ashland.
Oh, so Milford is the
I
new
think
one.
Milford has
No,
been,
it's the new.
because they, not the last meeting, but the meeting, another meeting before, they were at that meeting, because they connect, it makes
Mhm.
sense to.
Especially with some of the work that they were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who's intended on going? Sounds like we've got
We may have to post them.
Right now, it's on my calendar to go. so
I
we
have
should
it on
prob-
mine as well, so.
Good.
Well, if it's just the two of
No,
us, we don't
okay.
have to post.
Yeah.
Or either of
I'm
you.
not
probably-
sure at this
we
point.
probably
so
same
I'll-
with
I'll-
me.
We
we'll
should
let you know.
probably
Probably not.
post.
Just post it
Just to
anyway.
be
yeah,
sure.
And if not,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. FY '20 budget up, now we're in town manager reports, FY '20 budget update.
yeah, moving.
Oh,
Did we
no
catch you off
pressure.
guard?
No, yeah, you did, actually. A little pressure here. All right, so I'm passing out some budget documentation
Another
as well.
small forest.
Yeah, I apologize for all the trees. I know. Just, I'll go through, what I've put together is a very, very early draft of my transmittal letter that goes in front of the budget, very, very early. So please excuse typos, and if there's like dangling sentences and stuff like that, again, please excuse. But just kind of talks about some of the major elements of the budget this year. Then I've included a general fund overview, a budget summary vote, which is all the funds for the general fund, and then more budget detail for each of the departments, and then I also have at the very end, I have the 5-year forecast as it is right now, and then also a list of capital projects. So if you don't mind, what I would like to do tonight is just go through some of the highlights of the budget as it has been put together. It's pretty close to being, I think, finalized in terms of the numbers. First, I want to go back and just as an overview. So this year's general fund budget, it's proposed at $64,051,647. So that represents a 7.6% increase over the previous year. Now that's going to elicit the first question, which is how can you go up that much, especially within the constraints of Proposition 2.5? And as we've talked about previously, we saw this year actually a significant increase in our Chapter 70 funding. That's something that has been talked about for Ashland being disproportionately affected by the Chapter 70 formula for years. It seems like that advocacy, especially by Senator Spilka, has started to bear some fruit. So with the governor's budget, we saw a significant increase in Chapter 70 aid, and we do feel like that's going to be the baseline for the coming budget discussions.
What was that amount?
The total budget amount $64,051,647. So,
And what page is that correlating to that I'm looking at?
Well, it was supposed to be, again, it's probably a typo, but it should be at the end, the budget summary vote of all funds, which says right now 62 million. So I'm off somewhere. Actually, we'll blame it on Brittany. Brittany's off somewhere.
Okay, because the top one, under total revenue, is also different.
Yeah.
Right in the first page,
It's
section
just shy of
2.1.
64 million.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to double check why those are different.
Yeah, there's, like I said, this is very, very,
Okay.
So it
very,
wasn't
very
just me,
preliminary.
That's
No.
why I kept quiet.
That's
but
why
okay.
I'm like looking, okay.
Can you give me that figure one more time, 64?
Expected $64,051,647.
It's on the front page, Joe, on the third.
And seriously, right now, I can't tell you if that is my typo,
Okay.
or if that
Oh, I got you.
is
Okay. Thanks,
a
Rob.
typo
My
somewhere
bad.
else. But it's a significant increase. It's going to be
Yeah.
probably around a 7.5% increase.
But you're saying that the majority of that increase is because of our state aid that's coming in, not
Correct.
increase in taxes or anything like that?
Not increasing taxes
Okay, 'cause that's
over
where-
than what the allowed.
Okay,
2.5.
I know we have a one-time permits that are, I'm trying to remember if those kind of already gone through and.
So we've budgeted permit revenue a little bit lower this year than what we have in previous years, just based on what we're predicting in terms of the housing downturn and our own, I think, conscious decision to kind of stunt growth here within the community.
Hey, Michael,
Yeah,
on the overview, on the meals tax, you're showing the zero.
yeah, so
You're gonna
it was
get to that?
presumptuous, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
I'm pulling it out in the special fund,
Ah, okay,
that's why.
yeah, that's why I said it was presumptuous.
there you go.
So I think, Superintendent Adams and I, had a discussion about, our confidence in the Chapter 70 numbers. Again, we feel like the governor's number is going to be the base, and that it will only go, if it goes any direction, it will go higher. And then we talked about how we apply our financial policies to that. And so we've talked about the fact that once we went, a good chunk of that increase, a significant portion of that increase is related to the move to tuition-free full-day kindergarten and the ability to count those students towards our Chapter 70 formula. So what we did is we backed out that money from the Chapter 70 amount that was increased, and then took the rest and split that 70-30. So.
Makes sense.
So I'll just go through, I think, some of the highlights of what we've been able to make investments in based on this increase. So I first want to start off with the police department. So what this includes is it includes funding for an additional police officer. It gets us closer to the professional standards of the number of officers we should have for a community our size, but then it also gives us the ability to provide like another specialty assignment, perhaps an additional school resource officer on a full-time
How many
basis.
police officers do we currently have?
28. We have 28 budgeted.
Thank you.
In the last study that was done a while back, 32 was the preferable.
For some reason, the number 31 is in my
31,
head.
okay.
But you could be right, Joe. In fact, I believe we were actually closer to 30, I think, back in the year 2000. Was that, you would know. I also have funding in here for a deputy chief position, specifically the conversion of one of our lieutenant positions to a deputy chief position. That's dependent upon so we have 2 lieutenants, what they plan on doing in their future. If one chooses, let's just say, to retire, we would use that opportunity to convert that position to a deputy chief.
So we just have 1 lieutenant and 1 deputy chief?
Yes. I think the ability for our new chief to hire a dedicated right-hand person is going to be critical to the success of the department. I think
This is a non-union position?
this would be a non-union position, and this would also not be civil service as well, which is critical. And, I've benefited from, the ability to choose an assistant town manager who complements my skill sets. I'd like to think that Tony felt like he was able to do the same thing when he hired me. It's just really critical to be able to do that. Moving to the Ashland Fire Department. So what the funding that is included here will pay for the town's portion of 4 firefighters through what's known as the SAFER grant program. So the SAFER program is through FEMA. It gives us the ability basically to add firefighters at a reduced cost for the first 3 years. So they pay 75% of the eligible costs of a firefighter position the first 2 years. It goes down to 35% the 3rd year, and then goes down to 0. We may bear the full freight of that firefighter's
How
cost.
do you anticipate that process working? I mean, you think over the years you'll get enough to increase the town's contribution?
Well, let me just finish up my thoughts on the fire department. Just this also includes funding for right now. I don't want to say converting the captain to a deputy chief position, but basically creating the deputy chief position and not backfilling the captain position. Now, what Chief Roby has asked for, and I'm tending to agree with him on this, is to only go for 2 firefighters through the SAFER grant program and then backfill that captain position. He feels like that would give him the best operational, the best personnel for the operational needs for the department. Okay. That actually is a little bit more comfortable for me, and I would also say for the FinCom. We discussed this last night. I think from a sustainability standpoint.
Right.
But that's something that we haven't necessarily finalized, but
How would the 2
discussions.
work? I know that 4 is the operative number for shift-wise for the fire department. So you're adding 2 more firefighters. How would that work within their work schedule?
Well, under the contract, the next 2 firefighters that we hire, we have the ability to put them strictly on day shift.
Okay.
Now, so that's an option. Another option is to, fill half of our shifts with 6 firefighters per shift. One of the problems with going to the, just the day shift firefighters, it's really hard to get those filled. Those are not necessarily very attractive positions for people who enter into the firefighter profession just because of the shift schedule. So you kind of have to find a special person who wants to work that day schedule. That seems very, very normal to us, but for a firefighter who's used to working 24-hour shifts, it's very different.
So they won't be working the 24-hour shifts. They'll be working 8-hour shifts.
If they do just the day shift,
It'll be just the day
if we
shifts,
just put
so
them on
8-hour
days.
shifts, 5 days a week, or the
And-
4 and 2.
it would be 5. It'd be 5.
Okay.
And we're looking at doing that because we've identified that during that daytime is when our firefighters are the busiest. And
Correct.
by adding
Call-wise.
an extra person during that time, it would benefit the community more.
Correct. But I think the main takeaway from this is we have the flexibility to do this with the fire department. Again, wasn't that long ago we were still just talking about how trying to get to to 5 per shift, and that was a big accomplishment.
Great.
Under the Public Works budget, I've included money this year for a tree trimming and removal program that our DPW Director, Doug Small, has identified as very critical for the resiliency and the safety for the community. It was only a coincidence that last week we had those significant windstorms that had caused a lot of damage and a lot of havoc throughout town. So we've included that in the Public Works budget. We also have included this year, and we can talk about it more when we get to stormwater, but there's a subsidy for the stormwater budget within the general fund. That's something I neglected or forgot to mention to you last night when you were talking about stormwater, is that we actually have the ability to offset the amount you have to raise through the rates through a general fund subsidy, which is included here at $30,000. So that's something the FinCom felt was very important when we were having the discussion about the enterprise fund.
Good.
So,
Just, Michael, just go back to the trees. So if people, this is like if people see, you know, a tree they think is dangerous, they could call DPW and say, we think you guys should trim it or whatever.
so it gives us the ability to do that. There's also been a number, so we have a backlog of those calls, and then we also have a backlog of trees that have been identified through our own personnel that are dangerous. So
That's great.
So the Ashland Public Schools budget, they voted on February 27th on this amount, the $33,151,647, which I'm hoping that matches up with what we got in the sheets here.
Seeing 34, 35.
So I think I'm off by $1. I'm sorry. I had
Oh.
646. Which is an approximately 8.5% increase from the previous year. The superintendent released his executive summary, which details a lot about where the investments are in the school budget. I know he's making significant investments in literacy electives, facility maintenance, English language learners, and special education. And I think that's pretty consistent with what you heard when you went to that budget workshop that they did in December. It's not necessarily part of the general fund budget, but I am going to propose that we hire a sustainability coordinator, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit later. It's just here in the budget message, just for some transparency's sake. And at this point in time, I would like to actually skip over the narrative that I have with the enterprise funds and start talking about the capital budget, because that's really where the meat and potatoes, I think, of this year's town meeting is headed towards some of these projects that we have funded in the capital budget. The two projects I really want to call attention to are, I've included funding in here for $5 million to do the downtown project, or supplement the state funds that we have for the downtown project, which includes so that includes the wider sidewalks, the newly designed crosswalks and traffic signals, the cycling amenities, the undergrounding of the utilities, and the placemaking amenities. Again, from Main Street, from Pine Hill to the Summer and Homer Street intersection, and then Front Street from the intersection of Main to approximately where the Ashland lumber site is. Again, this is something we've already spent a lot of money on in terms of getting the design and getting that to a point where it's been engineered, it's just ready to fund. We would also have, as part of this, we would replace our water infrastructure as well. And actually, pending approval, we would be looking at starting that actually this summer. So we'll actually start seeing activity happen this summer for something that we've been talking about, I think, for quite a while now. It also includes funding for $1.3 million of what we call non-participating costs in the Route 126 project. So we've talked about the 126 project and the way it is funded primarily through the state's TIP program. But there are a number of costs that we will be responsible for to really achieve, I think, the vision that everybody came up with back in 2014, 2015. So it includes $1.3 million for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And It also includes money for additional modulars, the Warren School. That is a necessity. Includes a pumper truck. And then we have a number of smaller items as well, but, you know, it's really nice to have the ability to do this through our capital program now, and I think that's something that we can really take a lot of pride in. I think this is the third year that we've really, you know, ambitiously, or had an ambitious, I guess you could say, capital program, so
Could I
pretty
just
proud of that.
interject a question on respect to what you just said with the downtown project?
Yeah.
And the wider sidewalks? This past snowstorm that we had, if you were to walk down Main Street, they're white sidewalks, and they're not completely clean. There's not a lot of snow that's been removed. You just have one path, and you have maybe 4 to 5 feet, maybe even 6 feet of sidewalk that needs to be cleaned to get to a business. So if we're gonna do this all downtown, I would suggest that we look at probably getting a larger piece of equipment that would be able to clear one path of snow as it goes through the downtown area. Because, I mean, just next door, if you take a look at what next door is, I mean, they're just, they're little paths.
You're right. I think that some businesses, in my mind, I think businesses have a responsibility as well
That's my
to
reaction too.
Yeah, but
participate.
if we
Yeah.
widen, I mean, if we're gonna widen all the downtown sidewalks,
Yeah.
I mean, I can see the responsibility of taking, you know, making a path to their doorway. But if you're gonna extend that sidewalk out to 9 feet, we have a responsibility as well.
Gotta
Well,
invest
I
in
agree with
equipment.
that, but I think, again, I think there's a responsibility for the business owner as well. And some businesses do a very good job of cleaning and supplementing what the town has done, and some businesses do not. And so I think, you know, I think we need to kind of work both angles, Joe. You know, I agree with you. I think we can do a better job. And I don't know, maybe it's an equipment thing. I know the street plow that we use seems to be one of the
Sidewalk plow.
old variations of it. I don't know,
They have
but
two kinds.
So, yeah, we actually have two. I'll have to go out and look at exactly what you're talking about, because I think, like, our sidewalks that we have now are actually pretty narrow. So if you look at, like, the Nick's property, like, there's our sidewalk, and then there's concrete that's in front of the business that is their property. I think our sidewalks themselves, I think in some places it's wider, but it's like a 5-foot, maybe a 6-foot sidewalk. On the east side of the street, they're actually, and then you've got the telephone poles that
yeah.
Right,
Like
but I'm
interject.
talking about in the future, if we're
Afterwards, yeah.
making
Well,
these
that's mine.
expansions,
That's
that's.
true.
If you-
That is
If
true.
you take a walk down on this side of Main Street, Town Hall side, and go from the railroad tracks down to Summer Street,
Okay.
you'll see a wide variation in the conditions of
No, you're right.
which reflects what the businesses are doing to
To,
clean the sidewalks.
yeah, supplement the.
It
the work.
also goes to the discussion we've had before, right, about homeowners helping do we didn't say it would be mandatory, but we've said, if you
Yes.
have a sidewalk, if you can, try to clear it.
Yeah.
And I would think it's similar for a business. It's certainly to their benefit to make sure that their customers can access their building.
Yeah.
My comment was, though, with this
plan,
project
yeah.
that's coming down the road,
Sure.
I understand now that it's up there, that it's up to them to clean off the sidewalk to their best of their ability, so people can come in and out. But if we're widening it on our behalf,
Yeah,
why
we may
should
wanna
we
look
have
at
to
it
be
quick.
responsible?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good
It
point,
is.
because in some places, we would actually be doubling the width of the
Right.
sidewalk in some places.
I happen to be all in favor of residents cleaning off their sidewalks,
Though-
particularly in
though-
my neighborhood, because the sidewalk's on the other side.
Right. Though I felt bad, I was watching my neighbor across the street with his own, snow blower, cleaning the sidewalk in front of house, and I looked at him and said, you know that either tonight or tomorrow, they're gonna come, because we're on a main street.
Oh, yeah.
They're gonna come with the plow and clear it, and,
Yeah,
but,
I think the
Nope.
challenge with the sidewalks, residential sidewalks, of course, are the kids going to the school
Schools,
buses and
right.
walking in the
Right.
streets,
Right.
so.
right?
Yeah.
All right, Michael, and you have a conclusion on this budget, I think, right? You want to talk about?
Those are really the main things. I think if you look at the forecast, you'll see we're actually in pretty decent shape for the next couple of years. We are showing a deficit, but I think it's a manageable deficit. But I think, again, it's, this Chapter 70 infusion has been very, very significant. I will say, and I've kind of, put on my doom and gloom hat,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I think that's good.
We've talked, I've already had a conversation tonight about the economic downturn that will eventually happen and how we're prepared to handle it. Two things I do want to bring up are, and Mr. Hanna, if you're listening, please perk up, are our OPEB and our pension liabilities.
I was just gonna ask that.
So,
I was just gonna ask that question.
So where are we at?
Yeah, where are we at with those figures?
so we've got, our OPEB liability is still around $42 million, but we've got a lot more funding than we did previously.
ahead.
Our pension, so this is a problem. Our pension is part of a larger pension system, Middlesex Retirement. It is scheduled to be fully funded in 2038. But I can't tell you what next year that means in terms of a year-over-year pension increase. Can't tell you what it means 10 years down the road, because it's all a part of
Tied
this,
together.
Right.
yeah, this larger system. So we're going to need to start, I think, in a couple of years, or at least next year, start thinking about, okay, let's think of a little more long-term strategy and actually put together a more solid plan, more than what we have currently. The bond rating agencies were very, very pleased with what we have done, and they're very confident that we will take care of our liability, but they did point out, this is a liability that you have to keep your eye on. So I don't know if we use like a pension stabilization fund, if we increase more of our free cash each year towards OPEB. We've got to look at something.
Might it be an adjustment in our policies now that we're at, we said once we hit 10% of our reserves, we're gonna look at doing different things, so.
Yeah, currently we're at 30, we dedicate 30% of our free cash to OPEB. We might want to look at bumping that more. Right now, we have, for each new employee we bring on, we fund their annual required contribution.
Which I think is a great idea.
So, so, that kind of snowballs over time. The school department does not participate in that. They don't have as many employees that would participate as part of it, but, it's something
Are they
maybe
doing
we need
any
to have a
percentage,
discussion.
or-
No, but I think that's something that we'll have a discussion with them at some point, or we'll need to have a discussion with them at some point. But,
So
It's
you
important.
presented to FinCom this same information?
the same information,
Yeah.
actually made a couple different tweaks today.
Mm.
And what I would like to do in terms of next steps is, so I'll have a final budget with the enterprise funds for you to vote on at the next meeting. And then Brittany and we talked, I think we'll be able to have the budget document put together about the second week of April, which is kind of on time with what we're trying to do. What I would like to do is after we get the budget voted on, is I would like to release like the transmittal letter that has some of these highlights along with the numbers out to the public in advance of the bigger budget book.
Could, just a thought, would it make sense to put this draft out to the public so that we go to vote it next meeting? If they have questions, they could come at that point?
If I can
mean,
make
don't
all
know
the
if that
numbers
makes sense, or
consistent.
You
what-
gotta have the numbers. though
If I can make them
right?
consistent.
Yeah, I mean,
Two corrections, but yeah.
I mean, now that we've used this, it's public knowledge, and,
Right.
Yeah.
and certainly you want that letter to match what's, in the document, but I'm just wondering if it would make sense to put it out there as a
No
draft,
reason why
so
not. We could
before
do
we
that.
vote it, if people have questions as to what we're doing, they could at least come and ask those questions. Because I know, like, the schools, they do a public hearing before they vote their budget.
Yeah, that's what they did on the 27th
Right.
and
Yeah.
voted, so.
All right, so you try to post something over the next week or so.
Yeah, we usually have a budget section on the finance website that has the presentations that
Right.
we do to FinCom and things like that. Okay, any other questions on the FY20 budget?
No?
Let's
No,
just make sure all
sounds
the
good.
numbers match.
Yeah.
All
Should,
right.
should the state budget change? And I know this is bottom line, but if the governor's, budget, well, you're using the governor's figures,
Mhm.
right? So if the, the legislative budget is higher, and we receive more monies, what would be the anticipated revenues? Where would they go?
We would split those
70-30,
70-30,
right?
yeah.
Okay. And the 30% that we retain, do you have any idea where you would possibly put any of those? Would you put it towards OPEB, or would you put it in the rainy day account? How would you see putting that?
I don't know what I would probably look at doing, especially because that won't be finalized until July, is wait until the November town meeting to make
Okay.
those adjustments. And that gives us a little time to think and
Think
have some
about it.
conversations
What
about
we
what
have
we
and
want to
what's
do.
going on,
Yeah.
and makes
Right.
sense.
Hey,
Well,
quick
go
update
ahead.
on our snow budget as it stands right now.
Well, it was overdrawn by 130,000 a couple weeks ago. So it's shot.
And we have
blown
more
up.
on the
Can
way,
we get a full update next meeting?
Yeah.
From the snow, and that would be
Yeah.
good to know.
So,
with more snow coming this Sunday.
I thought it was rain.
I hope it's rain.
The
so
last
thank you,
quarter.
Michael, and this
Thank
is
you.
really a, it's a solid budget, and we're kind of lucky to, be in such a great good fortune to be in such a great position. I'm sure there's
Good
plan.
times we all remember when it wasn't this good, so.
And again, the several school committee members were at the FinCom meeting last night because Jim was presenting the school budget to FinCom as well, and they remarked about how that and then how collegial our working relationship is. Yeah, and I have to say, that's why it's a little bit delayed this year. We had postured ourselves for one set of numbers, and then we're completely blown away, in a good way,
Yeah.
by the governor's numbers. And then we had to be cautious, and it's like, okay, well, how real
Right.
is this? Is this going to get changed? So, so it's very helpful.
All right.
Very helpful.
Well, thank you. All right, next is update on town meeting warrant.
Yeah, so Jen has been putting together the warrant article, so she can give you just an idea of what some of the, what we have coming up on the annual town meeting warrant.
So we haven't started a draft of the warrant just yet, but I'm just having a running list of the warrant articles that we will likely have. We will have an FY19 budget adjustment article. Obviously, we'll have the budget article, a capital authorization article, our annual consent, which will include, like it did last year, the balances for all of our revolving funds. We're able to do it under that now. Our annual authorization article, and then also the CPC's consent article. And then sort of the articles that will be new for this town meeting would be, we need to create an account to disperse the money from the HRA dissolving. So we're working to do that, as well as transferring the 1 acre envelope at Warren Woods. Requires a town meeting vote. We have to revisit the ice cream truck bylaw, which I think we have clarification. It should hopefully go much smoother than it did in November.
Now we're in 30 minutes.
The Nyanza working group had been working on a groundwater overlay bylaw. I'm not sure what the status is, but I'm just keeping that on the list in case they do have something that they want to bring forth. And then the home rule petition for meals tax.
Which is just discussed, yeah.
So no property purchases, no.
No,
Nope.
at this time, no zoning.
No zoning,
No
don't
zoning?
anticipate,
No
We
zoning
don't
right now?
anticipate any
Yeah.
zoning?
wow.
Oh.
Not,
So that means we haven't heard anything back from UGC, or?
no, plus, I think considering the status, the outstanding status of our current transaction with the property owner, I'm not necessarily sure how much we're pressing on that either.
Okay,
So we're keeping it on the list, just
Just in
to
case.
keep
Right.
it in the forefront, so make sure that as we come closer to town meeting, we'll know that we have enough time to have the proper hearing and notice. But at this time, we don't have anything.
and town meeting is currently scheduled for
May
Wednesday, May 1st.
Well, what came up, of course, last night was the whole rate-setting question on the Board of Selectmen. So we're not anticipating any actions on the warrant article to try to remedy that?
I I think it was determined that we can set the rate, right? Based on,
Well, I think what we decided, or we recognized, is that we were essentially setting the rate.
Right.
But through an advisory role,
Capacity.
because the legal ruling
Right.
was that the Department of Public Works is the actual rate-setting entity. But obviously, through that process, we were submitted with a body of information. Now, it's been put on our laps to really
Right.
come up with a solution, so.
Hmm.
But to go to Rob's point, is it, do we want to go down the road of officially making the Board of Selectmen the rate-setting entity
for that, similar to water and
Right,
sewer
and we
and,
take it off of Department of Public Works and put it on the Board of Selectmen, so.
Which would mean a charter change.
Well, that's
And-
what I don't know.
and a
We're not
meeting-
sure on that, Joe, because the legal ruling spoke only about town meeting votes.
Which was the May 30th, 1990, when that was
It
done.
was even before that, because they talked about some dates prior to that. But, you know, I think I think it's premature to really, at this point, once the rates are set with stormwater, I think it's something we can put on a future,
mhm.
for future
To discuss.
consideration and see if it's something that's, you know, the urgency of it, I don't see.
Any
Makes
issues
sense.
with the water and sewer rate setting? That's that's a
I would-
similar situation.
Again,
right?
I think we need to have a legal opinion to clarify that as well, you know, realizing
Mm.
that, again, it's the same process. We, in essence, establish the rates, make the adjustments, and implemented by
Right.
Department of Public Works.
So should we ask town council to give us kind of a
Can't hurt.
summary of, or
Certainly
rule,
worth
you
asking
know?
the question.
Yeah,
Yeah. So why don't we do that, just to clarify how these rates are set and then what potential actions we should take. Okay. And, all right, anything else for town meeting?
I don't think that was it.
The warrant?
No. So moving on to the owner's project manager.
Yeah.
Oh, so I believe you updated the rest of the board about, you know, interviewing the different project managers. They were selected Vertex. Jen can give you an update on where we are with the negotiations with them.
So we're in the process of negotiating a contract that I am hoping we can finalize once it's presented to the building committee. We just have to find a date, probably in the next 2 weeks, and then we can execute that contract. So it should be forthcoming.
So we're moving ahead.
Yep.
All right.
Be moving that one forward.
Yeah,
Any
very good.
questions on
Yeah.
that? Good.
Yeah.
Update on Riverwalk project?
Yeah, actually, I'll turn that one over to Jen, too.
So I don't think we have anything new from our last meeting. I'm hoping to go out to bid in the next 2 weeks so that we can keep it as close to the schedule that we had anticipated doing construction in late April, early May, so that we can execute
Very
that
nice.
contract.
Okay.
We're gonna move forth with a timber bridge option that will be multi-span. Our engineers believe
Great.
that we're able, using this type of design, we'll be able to save a few $100,000 on
Wow.
the bridge.
Significant.
Yeah.
That's
They,
good.
the cost was really driven what it looks like from steel, and so we're hoping that the ability to bring in smaller equipment so that they don't have to bring in a huge crane, because they can sort of build it across the inlet, will save us a pretty substantial amount of money.
It looks good, too.
I'm sure it's gonna look, you
Yeah,
know,
it'd be
even more
Blend in
attractive than,
nice, yeah.
yeah, with that whole observation area
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah,
so.
it looks
And I'm gonna
good.
present the design and the bid documents to Open Space
Yeah.
next Tuesday.
Nice.
Okay.
Can you maybe show at our next meeting what the
Absolutely.
design would look
Oh,
like?
yeah.
So
Absolutely.
we can
Sure,
see
just
and
as
the
a-
public.
yeah, that'd
Sure,
be
'cause
great
Open
idea.
Space isn't televised, so, thank you.
Update on the Warren District.
All right. So I'm pleased to say that we have a project manager. We had a number of applications. I believe we had about 5. Ended up interviewing 2 candidates, 2 very well-qualified candidates. Actually, both of them Ashland residents. Really can't speak highly enough of both of them. But in the final analysis, we selected David Foster, who's currently on our facilities department, to fulfill that role. Mainly, David had a lot more knowledge in terms of mass procurement laws,
Really?
which is pretty important for this position. So David has started transitioning into his new role. He and I have had a conversation about some of the things that we're expecting, I think, over the next few days and the next few months. Right now we have roughly a 30-day plan. So at the end of 30 days, we should have a draft of an RFP for the Hall House. Again, that's for a contractor to, or a private entity to buy the property from the town, restore it to historical standards such that it could be placed on the National Register, and then dispose of that property and take on the risk of disposing that property. In terms of the barn, the Warren barn, we should have, by that point in time, a couple of conversations with Framingham State just to get a sense of what they're looking to get potentially out of the barn. They had some equipment that was housed at the barn.
Storage.
It's also a pretty important visual element
It's
for
an
some of the work
iconic-
that they
it's an
do.
iconic structure.
And I think there's some value to that,
Yeah.
to them. And
Yeah.
so I think it's important to have that conversation and see
Yeah.
how we can partner
And are we
moving
then
forward.
also getting quotes on revitalizing what's there versus replacing it for visual, or?
So David feels pretty strongly that the only option really is a complete rebuild, like a tear down and rebuild. Maybe utilizing some of the existing components that are
Mhm.
there, utilizing that as part of the rebuild as well. So, but he's, with the main timber being kind of destroyed the way it is and the subsequent degradation of the building to that,
Yeah,
that's.
that kind of made the choice for us, I think, in that.
The main timber frame?
Yeah.
And then in terms of the Valentine estate, he should have a plan of what the springtime cleanup activities are going to be in terms of, again, just kind of getting it sealed up, and start talking about a public process of getting
Public
their
engagement
input. Yeah.
process and what to do there.
Yeah, very good. Could you make a note to give us regular updates on this
Yeah.
process, please?
Yeah, we talked, I think what I'm gonna ask him to do is on a quarterly basis, either come in or provide a report, like a
Great.
summary written report of what's
Mhm.
happening, and what's being done, and so we can do that, either have him here
Okay.
or show up.
Well, and congratulations to Dave for taking this on. I think he's
Yeah, I think
the right
he's-
person for the job.
So it'll be good. Kind of right up his alley. Next, I don't really have much of an update on the rail transit district. I'd like to move down to the MBTA Vision Project
Sure.
because that is pretty substantial. I attended a meeting at the Metro West 495 Partnership, and it's a conversation that's been going on for a couple months now, but the MBTA and a number of other state entities are starting to really take a look at our commuter rail system and our transportation system in general. And they have established this commuter rail vision advisory committee, which is looking at overhauling the system and looking at different options to overhaul the system. I think one of the key takeaways I came from, with some of my discussions is they're really into the concept of looking at key stations on each commuter rail line. And these are stations that would get, it sounds like the bulk of the investment of new funds into their infrastructure and things like that. And so Framingham has been identified as kind of the key station for our region and our line. I can understand that, and I also can get behind the idea of these regional key stations. But I think it's going to be important for us in other small towns that have commuter rail stations to make sure that we don't necessarily get left behind.
Sure.
And Rob and I had spoken before about some of the uniqueness of Ashland. We're a smaller town that has a very large capacity train station, so a lot of people utilize our roads, utilize our infrastructure to get to the MBTA station here in Ashland. So
Well, we are a regional station, in fact.
Right.
Sure.
Right, we are.
Well, and Framingham just recently got some infusion to improve their parking, but they're still not as big as we are in regards to
Not
the
even
amount of
close.
parking
No.
spaces and the amount of people going there.
right, there's like 150 spots I think that they have.
This has been an ongoing discussion that we've had, and, you know, it's, you know, our station is, in my mind, more of a key station in this area than Framingham
Yes.
is.
I would agree with that.
agree.
Southborough's is very small.
And the station, and the fact is, the station in Framingham has been assigned to the Metro West Regional Transit Authority.
Right.
And they've done a great job in improving the station and making it user-friendly. I think, I can't speak to any other station other than Ashland. I can only speak to the conditions that we see on a regular basis. And so hopefully this process is recognizing this, you know, the needs of the smaller stations, not the smaller towns with the big stations.
Well, and I would think that because it is a bigger station, that they would try to spend more resources because of the amount of people that are using it. I mean, it's to their benefit
Yeah.
to make sure that our station is still viable because of the number of riders that are coming through our station to
Well,
get on the train.
Our argument when we went to Senator Spilka's office
Right.
was that, you know, give us some ability to be, to participate in. You know, let us have some ability to repair, you know, give us
Right.
some revenue sharing or however they want to structure it,
Right.
and we would get it done,
Right.
so.
What was the criteria that they used to select Framingham as the key station?
They looked at
Considering-
traffic going through the community, like,
Okay.
you know, near the station. They had a number of other criteria. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to get you all the link to the website that has their
that.
presentations.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Stuff.
Yeah.
And another thing, believe it or not, that has actually come up as part of the discussion is the idea of a third rail,
Yeah.
a third track, I guess you could say, either starting in Framingham, going into Boston, or even starting into Ashland and going into Boston.
Yeah.
Just,
Can you
that's a
imagine
lot to take in.
That's a
I
lot
can't even
to,
imagine,
I'm like, you can't even operate the
Where-
two tracks
well,
well.
and where would
so-
it be?
Are they
physically.
thinking that their current right-of-way is sufficient to add a third set of tracks? Is that?
I think they're going through that evaluation
Yeah.
process,
That's
but I do think
Well, you can
Ashland
see
is
how it
look-
adds
being looked at.
flexibility to
Sure.
have 3 tracks and really would help the operation.
assuming that they can get it to run on time and,
Yeah.
right?
Well, you need that kind of redundancy to keep
Yeah.
keep things moving. Anything else, Michael, on that? Now,
No, no,
I understand Representative Lewis is there gonna be a meeting?
I think he's
out
trying
here-
to set up a meeting with, between the certain officials with the MBTA and, you know, town of Ashland and city of Framingham officials, and I don't know if
Yeah.
other communities
I
are
think he told me
being
they're
involved.
coming out, I don't know, it's T or Keolis or both, they're coming out to Framingham, and he's willing to bring them out here. I thought he had a date that he had proposed, and I don't know, has that been confirmed? So if people are available,
Certainly.
Definitely.
The data, sure.
yeah, that, I don't have the date.
Hey, I know he was looking at a Friday,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so if
Yeah.
that, and so, you know, I'm sure people would be
Yeah, let
interested
us
in
know, but if
coming to that,
the more of us that could be there, I
Yeah.
would think would be a positive.
right? I don't know if it's next Friday, 10 o'clock, that's my recollection.
I'll have
but
to check.
Yeah, so that'd be great. And, you know, the things I'm thinking of, just when I saw this, this item, you know, I'm thinking about, you know, the size of our station and kind of the things we're doing around it, like the rail transit and the trail, both the Upper Charles Trail and the River Walk. You know, that we should be probably pushing for some sort of assistance and mitigation. You know, for example, there's traffic, you know, we want to put in that flashing light. That has to do with the commuter rail station, where if you're ever there when, you know, people are leaving, that, especially on the Burnham side, that really needs to be re-engineered, that whole driveway. It's just unnecessarily congested. You know, there's stuff like that that we should probably be looking at as part of this whole process.
Well, there's also discussion about redesigning that whole area based on the bridge that has to be
Yeah, and
constructed
Oh,
and
really?
possibly some kind
a
of
flyover.
flyover that
to-
drives you to the other side of the station.
Oh, I wasn't
from-
aware of
Yeah.
that. Oh.
It's still in discussion, they're looking at it, and
Like to connect basically the south side of the tracks with the north side of the tracks,
Oh
which
my
would
gosh.
be
so
huge.
that
Really?
people don't have to come through downtown.
Interesting.
be-
That's a big step.
Yeah.
I mean, I've suggested, if they want to make our parking lot smaller and give us the real estate to develop,
Right.
that'd be a lot.
Yeah, it won't happen. It's actually filling up now, so.
Well, it's, on one level, I say we have the more important need in Ashland relative to our station, but in reality, you can understand why Framingham would be designated. They've created a rail transit district, and when you look at the development going on in
Yeah.
downtown,
Oh, my
it's
God.
not
Oh, yeah.
driven, it's not necessarily driven by a parking lot, because
Right.
it's
Oh,
walkable
good point.
from
Oh, yeah.
all of these,
Yeah.
these
Definitely.
new.
There's like
And we're
cranes
doing-
on the horizon
We're doing somewhat of
in
this, we're doing
Framingham.
somewhat of the
So-
same thing.
And that's
you
the
know?
whole theory behind the rail transit district, so, you can understand it at that level, so.
So what, I'm gonna send an email with just some thoughts I had on this mitigation as,
Okay.
we should be aware of it. As we're having these kinds of discussions, I think it's, kind of good thing to keep in mind.
Okay.
So next steps on that, Mike, you'll let us know and we'll stay
The new
involved in this
housing in
process.
Framingham is unbelievable.
Oh,
I've been going on 126, and I
Yeah.
haven't driven on 135 past 126 until this morning.
Yeah,
Oh,
It's huge.
it's huge.
Now the
It's
new
un-
stuff,
Huge,
yeah.
huge complexes.
And there's a opening inside, and
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, very good. All right, Michael, I'll talk about sustainability coordinator.
Yeah, so,
Exciting.
I think I'd mentioned when we talked about the budget, the idea of funding a sustainability coordinator. So I found that we can actually put an adder onto our aggregation program that would fund a sustainability coordinator. That adder would bring our aggregation rate up to just slightly over 11 cents. The current Eversource rate is 13 cents. So I'd like to do that. I think the balance of the funding, I would also like to look at utilizing the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund, because one of the things that I think is really, really important moving forward and for this person to focus on is composting, the town-wide composting option. Currently, we have a private organization that's willing to take on customers in Ashland, but I think we need to look at something larger. So, again, I was pretty excited to find that we have the ability we have this tool, we have this option that we can utilize, so.
Is there any because we're a green community, is there any grant funding that we could apply for to help pay for this as well, at least near term?
Potentially, like, once that person is on, yes, we could do that. What we're finding now is we don't even have the capacity to apply for the green funding that is currently.
wow.
Yeah,
Because it's difficult.
we're,
to
we've,
keep up.
we're losing opportunities,
Okay.
Okay.
so.
Well, that's exciting. I just had a couple, have you told the Sustainability Committee, got their kind of feedback or buy-in?
I did mention it
It
to
is-
Matt Marshquist before the meeting that they were having on Monday, just to
Yeah.
let him know that this was something that we were
It could
thinking
be.
of.
And the other thing is, if you're going to, so the trade-off is, people will be paying slightly more in their, what is it, electricity bills, right?
Yeah,
A
it
small
comes,
amount.
based on the average residential customer, it would be 60 cents a month.
And what do you see this timeline for this move? How do you see it working out?
Probably effective July 1st.
So really
So
moving
within the budget.
ahead
Yeah.
without, and this is not a town meeting or budget matter, it's just a.
It's a
Good
decision, yeah.
So, the other, is there some way we can kind of get some feedback about this idea? I think it would be positive, but I mean, it'd be nice, I mean, as we doing these surveys, I know, Jen, you've been working on this citizen survey, is this something where we kind of get the word out to people, like, this is how we're using the aggregation contract? I don't know, I'm looking
Well,
at
we
other
definitely,
people.
we definitely have a notification requirement
Mhm.
as part of this, which Colonial Power will do for us. They will take care of that notification requirement. And that's typically, like, whenever we sign a new, like,
Agreement.
agreement with people.
That's, I think it's exciting, I think that's a great thing to be doing, but, people will be paying for it in small ways, but,
Yeah, when I saw
presumably-
the 60 cents a month, I was,
Yeah.
actually, that didn't make me feel as good as the difference that was still between our
Mm.
rate and the
That's a good thing
Eversource
to
rate.
emphasize, right? Yeah,
So-
we've been
And-
saving money
And
for,
to your point, if we can bring someone on, we are a green community, we as a community have committed to that. If we can have someone to keep getting grants, they can potentially fund part of their own salary by getting more grants to help us stay a green community, which then helps us save money in regards to our utility costs and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, if we end up getting like a $250,000 Green Communities competitive grant, which, we've lost a couple of opportunities in the last rounds for that, that's significant.
so, all right. So, kind of update, I'm sensing that the board is supportive of this initiative. Okay, very good. All right,
Yes.
thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. And then finally, I just want to give you an update on the police chief, more specifically the interim police chief. Have met with a couple of different individuals. I have made an offer for the interim chief position to one individual. He has verbally accepted it. We're still working out some of the paperwork. He's currently retired, so we're working with the retirement system. I do anticipate making a full formal public announcement by the end of this week. I do want to notify the department and have a conversation with them ahead of time, just for courtesy. But we are moving forward with that. Again, Chief Davis's last day, I believe, is the 22nd. This person would be starting the 23rd. So,
Will you have that candidate there with you when you make that announcement to the police department?
no.
No, okay.
No, I will not. And then I think, once that person is in place, there's a couple of things that I think I've told you that I would like that person to focus on in terms of some of the physical location of the department and a couple of other things. But then on our end, we'll need to be focused on the search for a permanent chief and how we're going to go about doing that. What kind of public input do we want as part of that process? Because I think that'll be really, really important. And then finally, I think we want to have Chief Davis in, I think, at our
Definitely
next
at our next
meeting,
one, yes.
which will be before his,
Yeah.
Right.
right
That'd be
before
great.
his
Good.
retirement.
Last chance to get at him, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Or he'll get at us, one or
Yeah.
the other.
All right, so
well,
that's it.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Michael. It's
Okay.
good, thanks. All right, so, do we want to talk about stormwater rates at all? We had the meeting last night. Maybe, since I brought it up, we'll do a quick, we can do it under board
Yeah,
reports, but,
I had it.
Oh, you did, okay.
Under board reports, so.
so it doesn't, we'll do it. Okay, so we'll start board reports. Mr. Mignani, we'll start with
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Chair. Good evening to all the residents out there that are watching this evening, that are here. We already made the announcement that March 9th, which is this coming Saturday, is a volunteer breakfast at the community center from 8:30 to 10. We discussed the March 14th, town Board of Selectmen meeting in Medway. And just to give you a quick update on the public safety building, which Jen gave a few moments ago, it's moving along. It's moving along now. We just need to set up a meeting. And I'm looking possibly next week, Stephen, to get the board together so we can make that
Keep it
decision.
moving,
Just
Mr.
keep it
Chair.
moving. And I've made several calls to and reached out to the property owner that provided us the land to see if we could get additional pieces of property there as well. And I'm just, well, I heard back, but I need to make another reach out and make a phone call and talk to her personally. And hopefully, we can sit down with Michael
Very
and
good.
do it, and do some sort of.
Still won't be involved in this?
Hmm?
Okay,
Yeah, I know, I do want you to be involved,
Okay.
because I'll be sitting next to you.
okay.
And I'd just like to thank the DPW for the great job they did this past snowstorm. And it was pretty evident. My wife and I went out, and, because she likes to drive and take a look at all the different scenery and everything, and we hit other surrounding towns, and the roads weren't half as cleared. And I'm talking the side roads. The major roads were fine, but the side roads were horrible. So good job for them, and they always do a great job. A reminder that this Sunday is daylight savings. Push the clock ahead an hour, so you don't, miss out on anything. And March 19th is the Soup and Tea program that's going to be at the Ashland Library, and sponsored by the Friends of the Ashland Library, and I believe it's a painting that was done by,
Donated by,
yes,
in honor of Bill Brown.
in honor of Bill Brown, and for all his volunteer work and dedicated work to the community. And so if you're available, that's from 6 to 7:30, 6 to 7, March 19th. And, yes, I do have, it's Lent, as you can see. And, it's,
Ash Wednesday today.
it's Ash Wednesday. And, I just like to remind people what it's about. We talk about diversity and everything, and just a little quick history about what Lent is. It's a time for repentance, time for fasting and preparation for the coming of Easter. But it's also a time of self-examination and self-reflection. And this is a time to, well, if you have issues with people, try to deal with them. Deal with them in a civil and respectful way. It's a time for repentance and a time to get back and focus your relationship with the Almighty. So that's why we have this, signature of the cross on our foreheads. And that's what Lent is all about for all the Christians out there that celebrate Lent. So, but that's it. That's all I have.
Well stated.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Yolanda?
Couple updates, couple reminders. So I'm a member of the Mendez School Building Feasibility Committee. We have chosen our OPM. I don't remember the name. We have to go before the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Association program, so our paperwork was submitted today. We're looking to be on their docket for their meeting on April 1st. Once we have been approved, that our OPM has been approved, then we will create a contract with our OPM, and then the next thing will be a designer selection process, and then we can actually move forward in doing research and study as to what we want to do for the Mendez building. The other thing, let's see, on this past Monday was supposed to be one of the courageous conversation versus confrontation. Because of the snowstorm, it has been rescheduled to this coming Monday, March 11th, at the high school, 7 o'clock. They are asking for people to RSVP because they are expecting a large turnout. Someone that the kids really like, a rapper, is coming to do some poetry related to that. On Tuesday, March 12th, Be the Change. It is a conversation with current and past elected officials as to why you should run or why you want to consider running for office. We chose that date because that way if someone comes and is inspired, they still have time to get their paperwork in for, I think it's April 1st or the last day in March, to run for office. So if you've ever considered running for office, if you just want to see what it's about or to help make a decision about who you want to vote for, come to that event. There's, I think, 8 or 10 of us that are presenting for different boards and positions. Then the last thing is on Friday, March 15th, the YMCA has their marathon kickoff event. It's a fundraiser to support their runners that are doing the marathon. I got to go last year and it was a great event. So if you want to support the YMCA and their marathon runners, you can go to their site and register. And I believe that's it. And I look forward to seeing all our volunteers on Saturday at the volunteer breakfast.
Yeah.
All right, Steve?
Good, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we talked a little bit about stormwater and setting stormwater rates. The board last evening met in a workshop setting along with the stormwater committee. And first off, I want to commend them for a great amount of work, a volume of work, and just
And the staff.
I'm going to say ridiculous amount of
Yeah, right.
materials that they provided to us, and but they did tremendous work along with certainly with staff with Doug and Evan from Public Works, and so commend them as well. But we're in the process of setting rates for stormwater. We approved a stormwater enterprise fund for those who aren't necessarily familiar with stormwater or the need for this. It's all predicated on federal regulations that have come down MS4 regulations, and it's all predicated on those requirements. So our challenge, of course, as a board is to set the rates and be as reasonable and low impact on the community as a whole, realizing that it's a fee that's being assessed. So at our next meeting, we will be essentially creating those rates. And we'll have some, evaluate a variety of scenarios, and at that point, we'll make a decision. So that's what we did last night.
Right. Thanks for the update. Does anybody else want to say anything about stormwater rates? So
No.
a nice
It was just
summary
a
by
thorough
Steve.
meeting,
Yeah.
It was-
and
yeah.
like Steve and Yolanda said, the amount of material that was handed
Yeah.
out to us,
Yes,
it was incredible.
very
It's
good, yeah.
though.
Yeah, it was. It's a good committee. They're very passionate about their charge, and actually we voted to modify
Oh,
their
right,
mission,
right.
right? And as an ongoing basis. So, again, thank you to the committee and to the staff.
All right,
Next thing is, after, what would you say, Susan? It's been at least a year that we started the dementia-friendly program. I see one of our colleagues on the committee, KG, is here this evening, but it's after a year's work and a lot of preparation. Our kickoff event is occurring next Thursday, March the 14th, 2 to 4 p.m. At the community center. And invitations have been sent out, and it's just going to be an opportunity to communicate the fact that we are a dementia-friendly community, and what does that mean? And we've talked about this many times. I've brought it up on a regular basis, but we're finally at that point where I think the town has got some training scheduled. I saw something that came through from HR. So town staff is getting trained, police have been trained, a fire department has been trained. So anybody that touches either a caregiver or somebody that suffers from on the dementia spectrum is getting trained. Our next goal, of course, is to train out in the community, meaning businesses, banks, convenience stores, and so on. So a lot of it is really communication and education process. So that's happening next week. I participate on a cable show. It's called the Frank and Mary Show, and my co-host on this he's an attorney, his name is Arthur Bergeron, and he specializes in elder law, and he spends a fair amount of time at the community center doing support services and so on. But we've been doing this show on a fairly regular basis, and today we had, and I want to thank them both, Fire Chief Keith Roby and Police Lieutenant Rich Briggs on. And we talked a little bit about the dementia program. Both of them have been involved in it. But we also talked about a lot of the issues that they see in their work relative to seniors. And, they come across, they are making calls on a regular basis to homes where somebody has fallen down. And, they come upon situations where people, they identify a situation where somebody may not be able to really live independently anymore. Right. And, fortunately, we have a foundation for taking it to the next step.
Mm-hmm.
We've created the human services support system. Jen has been instrumental in that, Michael. So we have those kinds of options now for people. But they touch, a lot of these situations. Now it's tax season, a lot of scams out there. So you've got to be, folks should be very concerned about phone calls, and whether it's from the IRS, the police department. If there's any question at all about a phone call or some kind of representation, police department recommends you call the police department.
Right.
And they will assist and so on. So again, thank you to Chief Roby and to Lieutenant Briggs for that. And And my last tune tonight is, tomorrow is the first Thursday of the month, which means the Ashland Lions Club breakfast and the Council on Aging meeting, so.
Very good. Thanks,
That's
Steve. Just a few items. I wanted, if you noticed that Cesario Contreras was here from Metro West Daily News, and I just want to, he's told me that he is now full-time, I guess. So the only thing I just wanted to note is that we can expect additional coverage, which I think is a good thing, and I think it's just to note the importance of local media, because, you know, newspapers are under a lot of pressure, and I think I just want to, it's too bad Cesario left, but just want to commend the Metro West News for, you know, being willing to invest in covering this community, because I think I've noticed over the last year very relatively low levels of coverage, and so I think it's good that they're continuing, that they're investing, at least committing enough to this community to do that. I also wanted to note our ex-colleague Carl Hackinson, I don't know if you heard, that was honored by the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions as Educator of the Year last Saturday at their annual convention. So wanted to congratulate Carl on that. I don't have much in the way of detail, but I heard that. So congratulations, Carl. Of course, as you know, Carl is a professor at Framingham State and teaches a lot of students on conservation. So, oh, and the other thing I just wanted to let people know about, and this is, Yolanda and I went to this Climate Leadership Summit last year, and now the Sierra Club, I think we all received it, is doing another thing, and I've registered it. I've registered for it. This is what they call their climate leadership, and the interesting thing, it's about, they focus on local officials, which I think is a little different. A lot of times it's about other levels of action, but the Sierra Club is focusing on what local officials can do, and this is where, you know, we kind of started with the whole net zero and the sustainability, so I wanted to just note it, that is scheduled for Saturday, March 16th, and it's right here in Framingham, and we'll have our local representatives will be there, Jack Lewis, Carmen Gentile, Maria Robinson, and so, you know, I look forward. It's usually a very nuts and bolts about what you can do, and so I'd encourage, you know, it's nearby. If other people
I
want to
unfortunately
register.
can't attend this year, but I
Yeah.
enjoyed it last
Yeah.
time. I felt I learned some good things,
Yes.
and it was a good
Yeah. So,
event.
all right, that's all I wanted. So I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
In favor? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.